'Cause we speak bold, ain't tripping on the haters. It could take freedom from a cold dead hands. We're locked and loaded for the last dance. 'Cause we're the new American gangsters, ready to die for this land.
No sun. Hello.
Hello.
Aha.
Okay.
There we go.
We'll start from the top. Hola, Shelby. How are you?
Ooh, great. Did you have a good Christmas?
It was nice. Got to spend it with my wife, who was unfortunately sick, but, at least we got to hang out together. She's doing better now.
That's good.
Yeah. Thank goodness for the near proximity of Mexico for wonderful pharmaceuticals that significantly reduced rates. Right.
Absolutely.
That's my plug for the day, right, for Mexico.
Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. I hope you all had a very, very Merry Christmas, and we hope you have a wonderful new year. 2026 is hopefully going to bring some new and exciting things, right?
Oh, yeah. I'm hoping it brings a whole lot of prison time for a whole lot of people.
I think everybody's waiting for that day.
Yeah.
I think the American people are getting a little impatient.
Right. And especially with, we learned about all of the fraud in USAID, right?
Right.
We learned about all the fraud in the federal, government, welfare benefits programs, whether they be Social Security, all of that other stuff, right? And now we're learning about all the just rampant fraud in states like Minnesota. And it's not just Minnesota, but Minnesota is the biggest one. And I think it's relevant to what we're going to talk about today.
Oh, absolutely. I believe so.
Yeah. And I think it's relevant in what we're going to talk about today is if you have that systemic of fraud, right, and you have the AG out there, Keith Ellison is his name, I guess tied to the Muslim Brotherhood, very close to the Somali community in Minneapolis, fraud in these systems, how can we not have fraud in our voter registration database when we have so much rampant and ripe fraud in all of these programs that are supposed to be overseen by government officials and Congress and state legislature, right?
Well, that's exactly right. And we're seeing the fraud and sorry, Minnesota, but they are really being put in the forefront here. Did you hear about the 20-year-old kid who went out with his cell phone?
Right.
And went to all of these schools where there were no children. So, I mean, we're talking, what did he uncover? I think they said over $1 billion in taxpayer fraud.
Right.
In the only school where he had contact, it was a Somali woman yelling at him for being on the campus where there were no children. Yeah. What is going on here? What kind of money laundering is occurring in Minnesota?
Yeah, and the interesting thing is how do you have an attorney general like Keith Ellison, and maybe, the same thing's happening in your state, Arizona. Maybe, the AG in Arizona is turning a blind eye to what Katie Hobbs is doing because she has literally taken the state of Arizona to a multi-million-dollar surplus in the state budget to a billion-dollar deficit?
I believe it's, last I heard it was millions.
Yeah.
But yeah, we went from a mass surplus into deficit in Arizona.
Yeah, and how does that happen? And so, people at the state level, we've woken up with respect to our federal government and the level of corruption there. People really need to wake up at the state level to what's taking place at the state level because these systems exist in part because of dirty and corrupt voter registration databases that allow them to elect people that will let them do what they're doing, right? That will turn a blind eye, that will look the other way and not do anything about it, right?
Well, and, I try and explain that to people all the time. Election integrity
Mhm.
and the problems that we see in our elections, it's not, that is not the ultimate goal,
Right.
right? Winning the elections, rigging the elections, altering the elections, whatever you want to call it, that's not the goal.
Mhm.
It's the means by which they accomplish all of the rest, right? It's how they allow the sex trafficking across the border. It's
Right.
how they allow the gun
Mhm.
running and the drugs and all of this fraud that we're seeing
Right.
from every administration at
Uh-huh.
every level in our government.
Right. And it wouldn't be happening, but for, a dirty voter registration database. And so, it's like what did, what was her name? Ronald Reagan's wife. Would she say that
Nancy.
Nancy, that marijuana is sort of the gateway to bigger drugs,
Mhm.
right? Like dirty voter registration databases are the gateway to a radically out of control and corrupt government, regardless of what the case may be, because there are tons of programs whereby the federal government is supposed to be verifying the validity of state expenditure of federal funds.
Right.
Right, because that's what's happening. It's these federal funds that are disappearing. And it's ironic that they're disappearing in a systematic fashion, very akin to what they were doing with USAID and the foreign spending of.
I think we lost your mic. We lost
did?
Mike.
We lost me. Brian's gone.
I think we lost me too.
Am I here? Oh.
Oh, never mind. Sorry,
Okay.
guys. We just
Yeah,
lost hearing.
And so sorry about that. Now I just completely lost my train of thought. But USAID, they switched from a foreign based expenditure program to an expenditure program that largely funneled money back into the United States,
Right.
for this color revolution that they had planned for 2020, right? And so you have a lot of this basically the Minnesota welfare program, the expenditure of federal dollars to ensure that people were living at least at the poverty level, if not above, was essentially being used as a tool of foreign aid,
Right.
As a lot of this money has been exported from Somalia into, exported from, I should say, Little Somalia or Minnesota into Somalia. A lot of it going to the Hamas,
Yes.
and a lot of the more extremist Islamic groups.
Yeah, the
Right.
CARE. I
Yeah.
think, right? Is it CARE?
You know what's funny? Somalia is taking over one of the key United Nations chairmanships. I got to figure out which one that is.
Yeah, go ahead and look for that.
Because it's a very it's a very important chairmanship.
Well, while you're looking for that, we're going to talk today about the voter rolls and the request from the Department of Justice. The Department of Justice had sent out notices to multiple states requesting that they provide unredacted voter rolls to the Department of Justice so that they could review them for compliance. And there's been a lot of pushback. So we really want to talk about, does the federal government have any rights to oversight, find out whether or not the HAVA Act, whether or not the 1993 NAVRA Act, whether or not these various federal laws allow them the ability to provide enforcement, especially when you consider they're funding these elections in the billions of dollars, right, in all of these various states. And so this is what we're going to talk about. But before we do, go ahead, Brian. Did you find out what you wanted to about Somalia?
You know what? I didn't, and I don't want to spend too much time looking for it. But Somalia has been made the chair of one of the United Nations more significant. And so, that's a very scary thought, especially because how long ago were UN peacekeeping forces in Somalia, or are they still there? And so,
Right.
Somalia is a basket case, a complete wreck of a nation.
Right.
How do they get an important chairmanship position in what's supposed to be a global governance or world development body, right, when they can't even develop themselves or maintain any semblance of stability as what we would otherwise refer to as a democracy, which are typically
Right.
Republican forms of
But
government.
we see the same kind of thing even here in local government and
Right.
in our own U.S. federal government. We see these people who just, look at Newsom, right? And look at what has occurred in California.
Right.
And then you see people within their political parties elevating these people and wanting to promote them.
Right.
So they trash the state or the city they're in, and then they get promoted, right? They trash a city, they become governor. They trash a state, and then they want to run for president.
Right.
So it's just an interesting dynamic that
Yeah.
seems to be politics at all levels,
Yeah.
including global politics.
Well, you know what the scariest thought of California is all these refineries shutting down, because it's the California refineries that service Arizona.
Right?
And so once all of these refineries in California shut down, that you can expect that that's a Governor Newsom effort to drive electric cars and all that other stuff in multiple states, because that's what they want. They don't want the use of fossil fuels anymore, and prices of petrol go shooting back up the roof. So
Right.
Arizona should build its own refinery.
I don't see why not. It's not like we don't have the real estate.
Right. We could build it in the Grand Canyon.
Well, I don't know about that. I think we might get a little pushback on that one, Brian.
Well, build it out there in the Grand Canyon, the part of the Grand Canyon that NASA has control over. And why does NASA have control over part of the Grand Canyon?
That's an interesting thought, right? But then again, think about what purpose NASA served under the Obama administration. Do you remember when NASA was actually put in charge of Muslim relations?
Well, I didn't know that.
We've got a space agency that was subdivided to work on Muslim relations in America and policies by which we interact with these cultural differences. It's just strange. It's really bizarre how we see some of these agencies kind of funneling into areas where they absolutely don't belong. But that's what happens when you have out of control big government, right?
Out of control big government. The easiest way to end out of control big federal government?
Tell us, Brian.
Repeal the 16th Amendment, right? Eliminate the federal income tax. Call your senator. Who's your senator? Spaceman Spiff?
Yeah, Mark
And then
Kelly.
who's the other dude?
Ruben Gallego.
Ruben Gallego, right? Right. Spaceman Spiff, whose glory primarily rests on sympathy for his wife, and Ruben Gallego, who had absolutely no sympathy for his wife. Call all those two senators and tell them to start the process for amending the U.S. Constitution to abolish the U.S. income tax, the 16th Amendment, right?
Well, if there's ever a time to get it done, I think now is the time to do it. I think
now's the best time to do it.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know that we'll have another window for that in any near future. But so what do you think, Brian? The Department of Justice sent out letters. Some were basic letters asking for states to provide their compliance plans to show that they're in compliance with the NVRA, the National Voter Registration Act, and HAVA, right, the Help America Vote Act.
Right.
And some of the letters requested preservation of evidence. Some of them required full voter rolls, including unredacted voter rolls. And a lot of states are really pushing back. Yeah. And it's my understanding to date only like 6 states have even responded to the requests.
Right.
Some complying and some not. What are your thoughts on the states saying, you know what, go fly a kite?
Well, I think that they have no legal authority to do so, right? And let's pull up which one's Article 1, Section 4 of the United States Constitution. Where's Article 1?
Element 2. Steve, will you pull
Element
up
2.
Element 2?
Yeah, and I'm pulling something up. I think it might be a little bit funny, but while we wait for Element 2,
You got it? All right, go ahead and pull it up, Steve. All right, Brian, there it is. Section 4.
Right. Article 1 of the United States Constitution, Section 4, very clearly states the times, places, and manner of holding elections for senators and representatives shall be prescribed in each state by the legislature thereof. But the Congress may at any time by law make or alter such regulations except as to the place of choosing senators, right? Now, that last section doesn't really matter anymore because the place of choosing senators, the choosing of senators used to be a state legislative function.
Right. It didn't go on the ballot. The citizens didn't
the
vote
people
for the
didn't
senators.
vote for them.
Right.
And that's part of sort of this separation of powers principle that was built into the United States Constitution, right? The House of Representatives represented the people directly. The Senate represented the states because it's the states that are signatories to the Constitution, right? So we had the democratic element and this sort of aristocratic element. States were supposed to be able to protect themselves from this rabid
Mob
democracy,
rule.
mob rule.
Right.
But that's gone now. We don't have that anymore. And so, Congress can make law changing, what the states prescribe in terms of elections. Right. And they have done so, right?
Well, and if let's look at Arizona. You're really familiar with Arizona.
Yeah.
When Senator Fan wanted to have access to all of this information, voter rolls, election records, the pushback was, well, you don't have any right to this. But the courts deemed that if you are the one creating the laws, you have the investigative authority to research whether or not those laws are, one, being followed, or number two, whether they need to be modified.
Right.
So wouldn't that same authority exist at the federal level to say, hey, we have the right to enforce these federal laws, and we have the right to investigate compliance and decide whether additional legislation needs to be made? Do you see a difference, or is that pretty parallel?
I mean, there is a difference. There's a slight difference. Senator Fan and the election committee, they have, legislative bodies' inherent power is the power to conduct an investigation, the power to educate themselves, right? The power to gather information. Because if a legislative body can't investigate or gather information, right, it has no effective ability to change the law or to make new law to have a positive impact on society as a whole, right?
Right.
But that's one of the critical functions of legislative oversight, right? And that would be at the federal level. That would be a congressional function.
Right.
Congress has the power to come in and say, okay, I want to see your voter registration records to make sure you're complying with laws that we have passed regarding the elections of officers to the federal level of government. And so does the DOJ have the power to investigate? Surely they do, because the federal government has passed election-related laws specifically relating to voter registration databases and the election or the voting by aliens. It doesn't say illegal aliens. It doesn't say, it just says aliens. Aliens are not allowed to vote in U.S. federal elections. And we can pull that statute up. Steve, can we pull up element number one? The 18 USC section 611. And so, in this instance, both Congress can exercise its oversight function.
Number one.
And the Department of Justice, the executive branch, can investigate compliance with the federal laws that were passed by Congress regarding voter registration. And so, all right, this is section 16 USC 611. And basically, if you go down there to A, it says very clearly, it shall be unlawful for any alien to vote in any election held solely or in part for the purpose of electing a candidate for the office of president, vice president, presidential elector, member of the Senate, member of the House of Representatives, delegate from the District of Columbia, or resident commissioner, unless, right? And the unless isn't giving, if you're number 1 through 700 of the alien list, then you can vote. Number A1, right? Aliens can vote in the United States because some states allow, or states or municipalities allow aliens to vote in their election.
But not in the federal elections.
Not
right?
in the federal election, right? And so what 611, 1, 2, and 3 basically say is when it's okay for an alien to vote in an election where there is an office of, a federal office on the ballot, right?
Right.
They have to be basically given a different ballot, right? And so Arizona is not a state that allows aliens to vote. The Arizona Constitution limits voting in the state of Arizona to citizens, and Arizona law requires people who register to vote to prove their citizenship, right?
That's correct.
And we were talking about this earlier, right? That's the very reason for the federal-only ballot in the state of Arizona, right?
Right, which was a whole interesting development. I don't know that a lot of people really understand that, especially people outside of the state of Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
But when Prop 200 was passed, it required, when you register to vote, you have to provide proof of citizenship. The federal registration form only requires that someone attest to being a citizen,
right,
but does not impose the responsibility to provide evidence.
Right.
So you just check a little box and say, I certify I'm a citizen, right?
Yeah.
So what happened is the tribal coalition got together with some other organizations,
right,
sued the state of Arizona, stating that we don't have the right to impose additional burdens on voters
right,
that would prohibit them from voting by requiring they prove it. All they have to do is say they are, and
Right.
that's it. Which is, to me, an interesting. That's the law falling very, very flat.
Yeah.
However, the Supreme Court ultimately ruled that the federal registration had to remain consistent. Therefore, if people attest to being a citizen, and that's the key, and I don't know that that's always being enforced and done, but if they attest to being a citizen but don't provide proof,
right,
they can still vote in a federal election,
right.
but they can't vote in any state or local election. So it's kind of a reverse
Yeah,
of what the federal law
Yeah.
actually states.
Yeah, Arizona is a really weird state, and so the ultimate question though is, are people like Adrian Fontes and are a lot of these non-governmental organizations that are either submitting changes to people's voter registration or submitting outright new voter registrations, are they actually verifying that the individual is a citizen of the United States? Because they can just pump these right into the statewide database, right?
Right. Well, and then the question is, Brian,
Mhm.
there's also a caveat that they're not required to keep that evidence.
Right.
So how is it ever audited?
Right.
How would one ever know? So
Yeah.
if you came in and provided your birth certificate, and
Right.
I marked Ryan
Uh-huh.
provided his birth certificate, he's a citizen. Um, if somebody came back later, they won't have that birth certificate on file. So there would be no way to audit whether or not proof of citizenship was actually ever shown. Now, the motor vehicle department does require citizenship proof for certain types of driver's licenses. And that's where Arizona is pushing back and saying, no, we do this because when you get a driver's license or a state
Right.
ID, you have to provide proof of citizenship. However, in the state of Arizona, you're not required to be a citizen to get a driver's license or identification card.
Right.
And how do we know, other than taking their word for it, that
Right.
the system is adequately capturing those differences?
Yeah, that's ultimately a very, very good question. But now I just forgot what I was going to say. It's all these hand signals from the producer over there. Sorry, I'm writing them out. Lift your mic up, and I'm like, okay, now, bam. I got too close to my nose and pushed my thought out of the top of my head.
But
I
you
guess.
sound better.
Yeah,
You-
my
yeah.
sinuses are cleaner. Yeah, but anyway, that whole rant you went on. How do you know? Here's the thought I had. Right, one way to hide fraud is to create an unauditable system.
Exactly.
Right. Very much like the elections that Arizona has had since 2018, right?
Right.
You have the government of the state of Arizona, and you have the government of Maricopa County very actively to hide everything about elections in the black boxes so they cannot be audited.
Right.
Right. Now it's interesting when you look at HAVA, the Help America Vote Act, that funds is that the act that funds the audits?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
But what kind of audits are they?
Well, it depends. I mean, it's supposed to fund the audits for voter rolls. It's supposed to fund for voter roll maintenance, I should say. It's supposed to fund certification of equipment, right?
Mhm.
Voting equipment, everything from e-poll books down to the tabulators.
Right.
But is it actually happening?
Yeah. The problem is, at least with respect to the voting machines and stuff, the audits are called risk limiting audits,
Mhm.
right? And by the very nature of its name, right, they're audits designed to limit the risk that something will be found,
Right.
that impacts the outcome of the election, right?
Right.
And so if you're a member of Congress, you might want to change that and have actual real world audits. But if you want to create a system that can't be audited, I mean, there you go.
Well, and that's what we've seen, right? We've
Right.
seen over the last, I would say, a few decades, we
Uh-huh.
have seen a system being developed that was built to protect itself.
Uh-huh.
So as they implement new potential areas of concern, they also build in safeguards or protections to prevent the public from being able to access it,
Right.
right? And they do that under the guise of safety.
Uh-huh.
We're just protecting you from yourself by not letting you know what's happening.
Uh-huh.
And it's kind of a consistent pattern. One of the states, so each of these Department of Justice letters, they listed some allegations
Uh-huh.
or some concerns. So the Department of Justice said, "Look, we got a complaint on you, and
Uh-huh.
here's the complaint, and here's what we want." So it wasn't just a blanket letter sent out to all the states; they were all kind of tailored. And one of the complaints the Department of Justice had for Alaska is, how do you have more registered voters
Right.
than you have eligible voting citizens
Right.
in the state of Alaska,
Uh-huh.
right? So that was one of the concerns. how does that happen? Well, Alaska responded to the Department of Justice, and they tried to explain how this happens. Should we share that with everybody? Should we put that letter
Yeah,
up?
go ahead and share it.
Steve, can you put up element 3, please? So
But-
this is Alaska's response. And to Alaska's credit, they provided their voter rolls to the Department of Justice. They
Right.
were one of
Yeah.
few states who actually did.
They complied.
They complied. But it's interesting to talk about, that concern, because people talk about it all the time. How do we have more registered voters than we have citizens? Okay, go ahead and scroll down, Steve. I think right about there. So it says, your letter stated that a review of the most recent report from the Election Assistance Commission's Election Administration and Voting Survey report indicates that there are more registered voters listed as active. So these aren't even inactive voters.
Right.
You have more active registered voters in the state of Alaska than the citizen voting age population, or CVAP, in the state. For Alaska, the report cites a total of 565,681 active, and I'm going to keep emphasizing active registered voters, and a total citizen voting population of 540,681,000, resulting in a surplus of 4.54%. So they have nearly 5% more active voters than they do citizens.
Let me ask you this question. You ever been to Alaska?
I have a few times.
What does Alaska have a lot of?
Tourists.
It also has a lot of aliens that are employed seasonally in the state of Alaska, because there is so much work needed. And so,
Because of tourism.
right.
And
Because
now that
of
you mention
tourism.
it, I never really thought about
Right.
it. I've only been on the coastal parts of Alaska,
Right.
which are very seasonal.
Right.
And there were a lot of different, it was a melting pot.
Right.
There were a lot of different cultures, a lot of different language
Yeah.
in these tourism towns.
Right.
And I never really thought about that. So that's
Right.
interesting.
And so, they bring people up from basically all over the world, including Russia, Central European countries, because they need a large work base that's bilingual in many different languages
For
because
tourism.
because of the tourism industry, especially in the summer. And so when you look at Alaska, or the question you have to ask is, have a lot of these people been registered to vote in the state of Alaska? They're aliens, and we've already gone over the federal law that aliens are not allowed to vote in federal elections. And so that's an open question. And so that's, I think, one thing that the Department of Justice wants to do is ensure that states are complying with federal laws that prohibit aliens, whether you want to characterize them as legal aliens or illegal aliens, doesn't matter, whether or not they're being allowed to vote for federal offices in our elections. And so that's part of the problem.
Well, let's look at can you put up element 6, Steve? So this is a letter requesting information from the Department of Justice to Nevada.
Right.
So like I said, all of these letters were tailored to the states. They weren't a blanket request. They actually list their concerns and what it is they're wanting to investigate and what violations they suspect. Go ahead and scroll down, Steve.
Well, Nevada has a large alien population as well, thanks to the city of Las Vegas and the international tourism there.
Right. Again, you're dealing with tourism, right? So it says there's minimum standards. It goes on to say voter information, posters on election day, etc. So it says, please provide the following information regarding the state's HAVA compliance. So it's asking, show us how you're complying with these things. Describe how the state processes new applications. Describe the process by which Nevada assigns unique identifiers to each legally registered voter, describe how the statewide voter registration list is coordinated with the database, right? So they're just asking for information to find out whether or not they have systems in place that will prevent violations of the HAVA Act. Go ahead and keep scrolling down, including you can see duplicate voter registrations. What are they doing to prevent that? Describe your processes, describe your technology. Keep going. And then it says, please send us Nevada's current statewide voter registration list. Please include both active and inactive voters. Please provide this information within 30 days of the date of this letter. Do you think Nevada complied?
No.
No. So these states are not complying.
Right.
And we're finding the same thing here in Arizona, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe, and I just had a thought. Maybe it's just sheer incompetence on behalf of Adrian Fontes.
Well, and the question is it because we don't have answers to these questions? Do we not want to answer them?
Remember, we had a case against Adrian Fontes. What case? Let me see here. Let me pull this up. His attorney was Kristen K. Mays. Dun, dun, dun.
Right.
Superwoman who has to have somebody else file and draft her lawsuits against the Trump administration. But we had this lawsuit in which we were seeking records relating to early ballots sent and returned by voter, right?
Right.
And so we asked the Secretary of State to go into his little Avid database and provide us all of the early ballot sent and return information for each voter for the county of Maricopa, correct?
Oh, I remember this. And just for some background real quick, Brian, I just want to let the people know, we filed this lawsuit. Well, originally we filed the public records request because what we found is that the Secretary of State database and the county database in Maricopa County were not consistent. And so what we were trying to figure out is if it's inconsistent and the state is showing one thing and the county is showing another thing, what does the state show on who received and returned mail-in ballots versus what the county shows? Because if the voter rolls are different, there's bound to be where are those votes being assigned, right? From one direction to another. So that was the background on why we, the people, requested those records. And go ahead and talk about what happened in the lawsuit.
Of course, we were dismissed. Our case was dismissed based on the fact that they submitted an affiant, someone to affirm or come in and testify truthfully that Adrian Fontes' administration, and I've got the affidavit here if anybody wants to see it, was unable to access this information except by doing it for each individual voter, right? So here's what they're telling the court. Oh, we can't get this information out of our database.
Right.
How in the name of whoever can the Secretary of State, who is legally obligated by both state and federal law to maintain a voter registration database,
not be able to extract reports,
be able to extract data from that database with respect to voters? It was a complete sham. It was a complete lie, and we were dismissed as a result. Right? Our case was dismissed as a result, and so that's just one example of Adrian Fontes, I guess, instead of letting us find the truth behind what's happening with mail-in voting in the state of Arizona, he would rather move forward and claim incompetence. He is incompetent, but this affidavit was a lie. It was a lie. There's a way to extract every bit of voter registration data out of the voter registration database. They simply don't want the people to know what's happening, which is why he went out of his way to hide all of those those voters where there was a motor voter flaw and they
Right.
didn't prove citizenship, and he tried to hide those.
Who those voters were.
Yeah, from the people
Right.
of the state of Arizona.
Well, here's something interesting that I want to point out, Brian. The Secretary of State's office uses the AVID
Right.
system, the AVID system, for their statewide voter roll.
Right.
13 of the 15 counties
Mhm.
only use the AVID system.
Right.
Yet the records we requested are records that are required statutorily to be provided
Uh-huh.
to the political parties
Right.
during elections
Uh-huh.
already.
Right.
So the AVID system
Mhm.
can produce those reports
Of course he can.
and does produce those reports for 13 other counties.
Right.
Why can it not produce them for Maricopa County and Pima County? It's
Uh-huh.
because they know those records will not match.
And they don't want people to know that.
Right.
Right.
So,
And so they found an affiant who is willing to come and say, "Oh yeah, we can't do this. We just can't get the data out of the system, and it would be we would have to do it by each individual voter, and there are 2+
Right.
million voters, and it would take forever." So
they claimed
So-
undue
right.
undue burden on the state,
yeah,
right?
undue burden, hardship, whatever the case may be. But it's quite frankly a lie, and it was a lie intended to conceal, I think, active voter fraud in the state of Arizona. How else do you explain it? How do you
Right.
have a different? How are Maricopa County uploads its data to the state. State sends its new voter registrations and other data to the counties. How are there differences? How are there discrepancies? Where do
Right.
those come from?
Well, here's something interesting. Let's talk about Arizona and the voter rolls. So Arizona responded to the Department of Justice in regards to its request for voter rolls. Steve, can you put up number 7?
Did they say, "Oh, I'm sorry, but Adrian Fontes is incompetent to produce this information"?
Right. Our system won't
Right.
run those reports. I don't
"No, I
understand.
don't know what you're talking about, man. I don't know what data that is."
So number 7, here we go.
Right.
It says, Secretary Fontes stated, quote, "My office received correspondence dated December 12th, 2025 that reiterated the prior request from the Department of Justice attorneys dated July 28th and August 14th. As Arizona Secretary of State, I have reviewed the proposed VRL data memorandum of understanding and have determined to decline the offer." So apparently it was just an offer for him to supply it. It wasn't a request from any place of authority. So he says, as have I already outlined to the Department of Justice, both state and federal law prohibit the release of Arizona's unredacted voter registration list. As Arizona's chief election officer, I'm committed to complying with both state and federal law to ensure that eligible voters, and I can't quite read it over the camera, but basically are protected at all costs, right? So what's your take on that, Brian? I mean, he's basically saying, I can't give the Department of Justice.
Right.
Now, if we're under investigation by a governmental agency,
Right.
we have to be open books for the most
Right.
part, right?
Right.
But if the Department of Justice is investigating the government, they're
Mhm.
going to say that the laws prohibit me from complying with your requests.
Right.
How do you process that?
Well, they're doing the same thing that they've done in that they're relying on that one statute that prohibits people from sharing the voter registration database.
Right.
And the whole intent of this statute wasn't to prevent law enforcement at the federal level from doing its job. The entire intent of the statute was to prohibit people like, what's the president of Ukraine? Zelensky, yeah. Vladimir Zelensky, from buying the voter registration database and selling it.
Right.
Or publishing it online or doing something else with it, because that would produce that would publish a lot of personal information about voters in the state of Arizona. they could be then targeted by Ukrainian forces to, change their vote to find somebody.
Or identity theft,
you know,
right?
or
I mean, you could
identity
use
theft,
some of that
whatever the case may
information
be.
for identity theft.
Right. And so, a lot of this is just smoke and mirrors. I guess Arizona's attorney general needs another lawsuit against Trump, right? Because that's how she's going to run for re-election. Oh, anti-Trump, 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 right? And that's,
Well, and I think we're moving in that direction, and we found something interesting. But before we go there, Steve, can you put up the website number 8? There was a web link given to you 8 days ago. Adrian Fontes commented again about his rationale and why he's not going to comply with the Department of Justice. And there was an article written on this one. Go ahead and pull that up, Steve.
It says Adrian Fontes is incompetent and needs to be unelected in 2026.
Well, they talk about, I believe it's this article, but one of the things that they talk about is that they are concerned that the Trump administration is attempting to build its own federal voter roll database.
Right.
So they don't want this information for legitimate investigatory purposes. They're trying to do something nefarious by building a federal database. Okay, go ahead and scroll down, Steve. And there are some quotes here that I think are quite interesting. Right here it says, "Why did I say no? Because it's my job to protect your privacy and data," he said in a video message on social media last week. Okay, keep scrolling down there. Keep going. Okay, right there. Quote, "The request clearly violates state and federal law," Fontes said. "The Federal Privacy Act of 1974 was created to prevent government misuse of your private data, placing strict limits on how federal agencies can request and use it." Sounds a lot like the Social Security fraud they're trying to protect, the food stamp SNAP fraud they're trying to protect. They're basically saying, well, we want to protect your data because we don't want them to misuse it. I feel like we are living in a society right now, Brian, and tell me what you think, where misuse is synonymous for identifying corruption.
Yeah.
Anytime they use the word, we don't want you to misuse it, what they're really saying is we don't want you to find the fraud.
Yeah. And that's like, Oy.
Bless you.
Thank you. It's just like, this 20-year-old kid in Minnesota, right? He uncovers all of this billions of dollars of fraud at the hands of the Somali community. The DOJ, I think it was, my wife sent me a text. 68 people are being prosecuted. A large number of them have already pled guilty with respect to the fraud that's taking place. But what's the governor of Minnesota doing? Is he saying, "Oh God, how did I miss this?"
Right.
He's not. He's running around calling this 20-year-old white kid a white supremacist, an Islamophobe. They're out there trying to tarnish this kid's name
And discredit him
and
completely.
the question is, not only where was the Attorney General, Nick Ellison, who needs to be unelected and then sent to prison because of this fraud?
And where was the media? I mean,
Where
this
was
is
the
a
media?
20-year-old kid
The media with a
his
cell phone.
iPhone,
Right?
doing the work of the media.
Was that?
Oh, Nick Shirley. Hey,
Nick
shout
Shirley.
out to Nick Shirley.
Yes, Nick Shirley, great job,
Yeah.
great job, and that's why citizen reporting is so rapidly overtaking things like Data Guru, right? If Data Guru lived in Minnesota, Data Guru would be saying, "Oh, it's all a lie. It's been proven." Right?
I love your data guru voice.
"Oh, it's all a lie. It's been disproven." Just like he did during the audit, right? "Oh, it's all a lie. It's been disproven," right?
Yeah.
Isn't it funny that that during the audit they were just so rabidly attacking all of us?
Oh, yeah.
But then when we came out with our numbers, right, they were like, "Oh yeah, see, they even found more votes for Joe. Oh yeah," right? And it's
right.
like, y'all a bunch of whack jobs, right? The real reason they attacked the audit, though, was to peel off some of those left of center rhino Republicans, offer them some kind of benefit. Like that one guy got that, award from Joe Biden, the citizenship award or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
And so most of the audit never happened because they were very effective at making us all look like retarded idiots. Thanks in part to people like, Jovan Pulitzer, claiming to be running the audit, but he had nothing to do with it. And so,
Right.
Yeah.
That's absolutely true.
Yeah, but it's interesting that oh God, what was I going to say? I think I just fell asleep. The risks.
It's been a long
The risks
week.
of getting old, right? It's been a long year, I guess we can say.
So we kind of got into this conversation because you were talking
Right.
about Chris Mays needing more work to prosecute,
Right.
or go after,
Well,
rather, not prosecute,
yeah.
but go
Well, here's-
after the Trump administration.
Here's a funny little thing, though, I want to add really quickly now that you woke me up again and I'm lucid. If it's illegal for them to provide it to the DOJ, right, which is conducting a criminal probe, then how is it illegal for Arizona to upload its voter registration data to SAVE, which is a federal government system that's authorized for use by HAVA,
Right.
and SAVE is the systematic alien verification for entitlements.
Right. They can give it to Eric.
Right.
They
can
can
give it to Eric.
Right. They can give it to
Right.
Eric, but they can't give it to SAVE, which is a federally
Right.
funded, secured, I
Right.
think, Department of Homeland Security
Yes,
system.
it is. Yeah. Right. So they can upload it to Eric is a non-governmental organization, right?
That's correct.
It's not even an agency of the federal government. It's not a law enforcement institution. It's not related to Homeland Security. SAVE at least is a database that's run by Department of Homeland Security,
which is supposed to be bound by
Right.
legal recourse and
Right.
top-notch security, right?
And so if you can give it for any of these reasons, none of which are spelled out in Arizona law, right?
Right.
Then so too can you give it to the Trump administration so that they can verify that aliens are not voting in federal elections, right?
Steve, do me a favor. Put up number 9. So this is the last element that we pulled, Brian, and I think this is interesting. And to your point, there's this state coalition
Uh-huh.
that has been actively working to stonewall any efforts to doge our government, to clean up fraud at any kind of level.
Right.
And every time the Trump administration is pushing forward with, hey, we want to look at this, we'd like to see what you're doing, this kind of same group pushes back.
Right.
And there was this joint letter issued to Pam Bondi and Christy Nome.
Mhm.
And then it was copied to Harmeet Dillon and Heather Honey,
Right.
and I believe one other department. Go ahead and put that up, Steve. Number 9. Okay, so it was addressed to Pam Bondi, and then it was copied to Secretary Nome at Homeland Security. Go ahead and scroll down, Steve. So it says each undersigned secretary has received a letter from the Department of Justice in recent months seeking statewide voter registration lists. In some cases, that request sought the full unredacted statewide voter registration list, including registrants' date of birth, state driver's license numbers, and last 4 digits of social security numbers. Now, in what planet, Brian, would a agency like the Department of Justice be denied access to those type of details?
On a very liberal planet that's seeking to protect a great deal of fraud, waste, and abuse in the U.S. political system because their campaigns directly benefit from that fraud, waste, and abuse?
Right. quite interesting, right? Now go ahead and
Right.
keep scrolling down there, Steve. It says in two recent meetings arranged by the National Association of Secretary of States, this is NAS, okay? They say that the DOJ and Department of Homeland Security shared misleading and at times contradictory information with the secretaries and senior election staff. So they're claiming that the secretaries of state want to know what they're doing. So they say the Department of Justice says that they want access to find out compliance with voter list maintenance provisions in the Help America Vote Act and the National Voter Registration Act. Seems pretty reasonable, right? And that's what the Department of Justice said we're doing. We want to make sure you're complying with federal law.
Right.
Okay. Scroll down again. Oh, okay. Here's where it gets interesting. So it says Department of Homeland
Right.
Security, Heather Honey, and you got to love this, who has a history of spreading false claims about elections, told attendees at a September 11th, 2025 meeting that Department of Homeland Security had not received voter data or requested it. Well, that feels pretty consistent with what the Department of Justice said, right? But then it says the same day, Department of Homeland Security publicly contradicted her representation and confirmed that they had received this data and would input it into an unproven and potentially insecure citizen check system, SAFE. This is the system you're referring to.
Yeah, Arizona uses SAFE.
Right.
Arizona uses SAFE. Colorado uses SAFE.
But they are putting unredacted information. Here's what DOJ discovered.
Uh-huh.
And if you go back and you look at some of the press releases that they did,
Mhm.
you can pull that down now, Steve. But, oh, no, wait, not yet. Scroll all the way down to the bottom before I move on. Keep going, keep going. These are the secretaries. So you've got Adrian Fontes, Arizona. Shirley Weber, California. Keep scrolling. Jenna Griswold, Colorado. Shenna Bellows, Maine. Steve
By the
Simon.
way, Jenna Griswold, going back to her real quick in Colorado, she's the one that published on the internet for public consumption the Dominion passwords,
There you go.
right?
Yeah.
She
She's
published.
also the one that brutally went after Tina
Yeah.
Peters.
Yeah, she published passwords to the voting machines in the state of Colorado prior to the 2024 election, was it?
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, keep scrolling. Oh, here's our favorite, Minnesota. Steve Simon, Minnesota.
Of course.
Francisco Aguilar. Oh, surprise, Nevada. We've got Maggie Oliver, New Mexico. Tobias Reed, Oregon. Sarah Hansis, Vermont. And Steve Hobbs of Washington. Okay, you can pull it.
Now scroll
Oh, wait,
back
hold
up
on.
real quick. Scroll back up to the, I think, second to the last paragraph. Okay, stop. Okay, it says federal law and the U.S. Constitution are clear. States are responsible for administering elections. Boom. Article 1, Section 4. Right?
Right.
State legislatures are responsible for passing laws, running elections at the state level. But, however, my two favorite legal words, right?
Yeah.
But and however, the
Federal
federal
races.
government, Congress from time to time may pass legislation impacting state and federal elections, right?
Now, that was done, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Don't we have a HAVA Act?
Yeah.
Help America Vote Act?
Right.
We have a 1993 NVRA.
Yeah.
Are all states required to comply with these federal laws?
No.
44 of them are.
Yes.
Yeah, 44
Right.
states
Uh-huh.
are required to comply with the HAVA Act.
Right.
All 50 states and
Right.
provinces are required to
Right.
comply with the 1993 NAVRA Act,
Right.
and they've all
Yeah.
done it. They've all made their state laws in compliance with federal law because they know the
Right.
federal government has the right to impose those laws.
Right.
Right.
The Article 1, Section 4, coupled with the Supremacy Clause. Right.
So when we look at this, this whole concept of these states refusing to provide this information,
Mhm.
the Department of Justice, what do you see next? What do you see waiting next? Oh, wait, before you do that, I want to finish what I was going to say earlier. DOJ came out,
Mhm.
and what they had found is mass Social Security fraud,
Uh-huh.
right? They found Social Security numbers collecting multiple benefits.
Right.
Okay. They found Social Security numbers of many, many, many illegal aliens that were collecting benefits.
Right.
They found Social Security of deceased people still collecting benefits.
Now, let me ask you
Some
this,
of them in the
this
hundreds,
question really quickly.
right?
If you want to prove citizenship on your voter registration form, what can you put?
Well, the last 4 digits of your Social
The
Security.
last 4 digits of your Social Security
Right.
number.
And this is
And-
one of the things they're
right.
redacting.
And we know that the Biden administration was passing out new Social Security cards like candy, right?
Right.
And so, if you can show a Social Security number as a method, or even a Social Security card as a method of proving your citizenship in the United States, because there are multiple, you don't have to have a physical ID to prove your citizenship, right? Then you got a lot of people who shouldn't be registered to vote.
Well, and I think this is what the Department of Justice, the Department of Homeland
Right.
Security, they've recognized this,
Right.
especially with the findings of DOJ.
Uh-huh.
We're finding out that these Social Security numbers are being misused, abused, right? We know that there are registered voters in the state of Arizona that are over 125 years old, which far
Right.
exceed the oldest living American citizen,
Right.
right? So these are deceased voters.
Mhm.
And we know that occurs. So what they're saying is if somebody 140 years old is still collecting a Social Security check,
Right.
is it possible somebody
Right.
who's been dead for 45 years is still voting?
That's a definite possibility.
And how do you determine these things, Brian, when
Right.
the only information you're given
Mhm.
on a person in a redacted voter roll is the year
Right.
of birth? You're
Right.
not even given a full birth date.
Right.
So you're given a year of birth
Mhm.
and everything else is redacted. So you have a
Right.
name, address,
Mhm.
voter number, and year of birth.
Right.
And I think what the federal government is determining is if we have everything we need
Mhm.
to clean up our voter rolls,
Right.
if we utilize the Department of Homeland Security systems, the Social Security systems that have been built,
Mhm.
these same systems that are finding the Social Security fraud,
Right.
that are finding the SNAP fraud,
Right.
that are finding the Minnesota fraud,
Mhm.
we could in days be
Right.
able to load these voter rolls into a system and
Uh-huh.
clean up our voter rolls. And we have Secretary of State saying, no.
They don't want to. No, every state on that list was a left-wing state, right?
Right.
And what they want to maintain is the status quo, right? They have done one of the reasons they tried so adamantly to get rid of Trump, right? To have him arrested, to make sure that he couldn't run for president of the United States, to have him impeached, was to ensure that they could maintain the status quo at the federal government level, right? They wanted all of this waste, fraud, and abuse because how many of these members of Congress go there poor and wind up rich? I mean, look at that. What's that Somali chick's name?
I can't remember her name, but
Yeah.
is it Omar
Il-
Elon?
Ilhan Omar. She's bloody filthy rich. The bartender, right?
Yep.
Multi-millionaire. How do you as a public servant get to be a multi-millionaire in such a rapid period of time when you don't do anything but bitch and harp about other people, right? How do you do that? She's not being paid by the tweet.
Isn't she the one that married her brother to
Ilhan
immigrate
Omar, yeah.
here? That's what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
there's a little bit of immigration, fraud, right?
Yeah.
Marry your brother. But so Arizona already uses the systemic alien verification entitlement system.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just about 100% sure Arizona does. And so they're already giving their data to the federal government.
But they're giving select data to the federal government,
It
right?
doesn't matter.
I mean, if you're redacting all this information that's relevant in order to actually find the problem,
Right.
then that's where it becomes a
Well,
problem.
The SAVE system is designed to find the problem.
Right.
right? And so if they're giving, they're you have to give specific data so that it can actually find the problem. And so, but I simply say that if federal law, which trumps state law,
Right.
unless it's an unconstitutional law, that the
Right.
federal law is supreme law of the land, and they have the right to this data, right?
Well,
They
and the
have-
SAVE Act, like or I'm sorry, not the SAVE Act, the SAVE system, as you said, is part of the HAVA standards,
Right.
Help America Vote Act.
Right. And
That
there
has
are,
been in place for a long time. It just has not been adequately utilized.
right. And there are a whole plethora of statewide databases that states can upload voter registration database to verify citizenship. Right. And so there's already been this give and take relationship where states are providing this data to the federal government.
But it was different when the federal government wasn't looking.
Yes. Yes.
You know, I hate to say this, but like one of the requirements of the HAVA Act and the NAVRA Act is they have to provide reports to the EAC, and then the EAC has to provide reports to Congress.
Right.
That's great. But I don't think anybody's ever looked at them, Brian.
Probably not.
And I think
Yeah.
that's where, oh my goodness, we've
Yeah.
been giving you cast vote records for
Right.
years, but nobody looked at them.
Right.
So we'll just keep giving them to you. Oh, wait, you looked?
Well,
we're going to
and
stop giving them to you.
Right? Congress has been asleep for so long.
Yes.
Right. And they, the system wants them asleep because then they're not looking at stuff.
Right.
And the members of Congress like it because the system continually helps reelect them and shovel money into their campaigns. And so, it's this win-win scenario, right? Congress goes to sleep, lets the lobbyists and the industries draft the legislation. They pass the legislation and go back to sleep. And it's been this cycle for a very long period of time. Our Congress has not truly, authentically engaged in its function of oversight in a very, very long time. Very long time. And that is how we got to this point where we have so much waste, fraud, and abuse in the system. And it's because that waste, fraud, and abuse gets kicked back into our politicians' coffers, and it makes their lives so much easier. It's just like, who's that one kid that went to prison from California? His parents both taught at Stanford. They're both close to the national security state. Do you know who I'm talking about, Steve? I think he's still in prison, but he built that huge pyramid scheme, right? Where he would take money and, for example, we would send money to the Ukraine. The Ukraine would invest that money in this system, and then this system would fan it back out to people like who's the leader? That guy with glasses, really old guy in the Senate, Republican.
Um,
God, what the hell's his name? They pushed the money back out
right.
to him. Right. They
Right.
were giving donations to the rhinos, giving donations to the Democrats, and then it collapsed, and all of the investors lost their money. There weren't really no investors. It was this corrupt system to launder
Right.
money, and the kid ultimately went to prison for it. But that's part of the problem we have with Congress today. Look at Nancy Pelosi. How much money is she worth? Right. She knows a bill's going to be passed that's going to impact some industry. She goes and it's like she's going to Vegas and she's
Right.
betting on that industry.
Insider trading.
Right. Insider trading.
Insider
Making
trading.
tons of money.
Well,
But
go ahead.
now I want Steve to type in something really quickly because this is going to be a public service announcement for voters. I want you to type in these words. Methods of verifying voter registration.
Yeah, go ahead and pull up a web search page and then type that in.
Methods of verifying voter registration.
And then pull up the web page and then hit enter. So everybody, we can all see it at the same time. Verifying voter registration.
Oh, Sam Brinkman-Fried was his name.
Okay.
Sam
Okay.
Brinkman-Fried.
Yes. Sam Freed.
Thank you to our viewer out there who's paying attention. Hey, do we have the ability for people to make comments?
Do what?
Do we have the ability for people to make comments?
Not yet. We need to. I mean, they can in the Twitter threads. Yeah, go ahead. There you go. Verifying voter registration. Go ahead and hit enter. All right, there you go.
Okay, so this is a public service announcement, folks. We're going to look at a few different sites. A lot of these sites are governmental sites, but scroll down, Steve. At the top, we got USA Gov, vote.org.
Vote.org is not a government site.
Go to vote.org.
A lot of people think it is, but
Okay, look at this, right? This is a non-governmental organization, folks. And if you want them to check your voter registration, you have to give them all your details, right? What can you do with those details?
Register them to vote,
or change their
or
registration,
change their registration,
right? Yeah. And so you got to give them all your personal information. All right. So go back. Yeah, go back.
Hit the back button to the home page. There you go.
Scroll down. USA.gov. I'm guessing that's the federal government site, is it?
Yeah, I would guess so.
Then you got California. You got
there you go. What's Vote 411?
Hold on. We're going to say Vote 411. Rock the Vote. That's a left-wing organization. Click on it. Again, if you go to Rock the Vote, you got to give them all the data they need to change your voter registration, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, go back. Scroll down. Okay, hold on. What's head count?
That's interesting.
Never heard of head count.
Scroll down to the bottom.
There you go. If you go to head count, you got to give them everything you need. Everything, right? Why would you type all of your data into one of these organizations' website, folks? Common Cause. Click on Common Cause there on the bottom. Another left of center organization. Oh, first of all, give us your money.
People Action Democracy.
Right. We want to make sure democracy works for everyone. Well, that's not the way democracy works. It only works, as Steve said before, for 51%. Right? Again, if you go to Common Cause, a left-wing organization, you have to give them all of the data they would necessarily need to change your voter registration. Okay, go back. Let's go back up to that one called 411. If you're going to check your voter registration, folks, I would say either go directly to your Secretary of State's website, or you can check your voter registration here. I'm not, doing a commercial for them. Click on Arizona. Okay, this website is nice because no matter what state you click on,
it takes you to the official place.
It does not ask you for your personal information or data. It redirects you to the government entity responsible for maintaining your voter registration at the state level. People, do not go into websites and type in your personal information expecting these organizations to check your voter registration. They are taking your data.
They're data harvesting.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they're data harvesting. But not only that, you're giving them everything they need. Yeah, you can take it down. You're giving them everything they need to submit a change of voter registration on your behalf.
Right.
And you shouldn't be giving that kind of data to people, especially when they're active in the election space, right? And so, there are hundreds of reasons why the Department of Justice is entitled to Arizona's voter registration database. And we've talked about this a lot, right? Katie Hobbs.
Absolutely.
When she was the Secretary of State, She granted a whole bunch of left-wing organizations direct access to the statewide voter registration database.
Third-party NGO registration sites.
Third-party NGO registration. They just dump shit into the statewide voter registration system. Then it gets pushed out to the counties. And, somebody needs to verify Arizona's voter registration database. Short of the federal government verifying that everybody in Arizona's voter registration database is a valid voter, I think the next best alternative, and maybe even a better alternative, is to just purge the entire voter registration database. And if you want to vote, you register.
I don't think there is enough cleaning and scrubbing we could do to fix the mess that we are in all 50 states in the U.S. right now.
Yeah.
I think we have to purge it. We have to dismantle the entire system and start over.
Right.
And, in closing for me, I just want to tell people I remain hopeful that President Trump recognizes the severity of what we're dealing with.
Yeah.
And for once, we have a president who's really listening to our concerns when it comes to our elections. I don't know what will be done or what can be done, but I'm hoping we can get ourselves back to a moment where we're hand counting legitimate votes made by a voter in person on election day.
Right.
And I think President Trump wants that too. We have to abolish this mass scale mail-in balloting.
Right.
Because as long as we don't have tight voter rolls, it's never going to work. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know that there's ever a moment where we could achieve perfect voter rolls. Therefore, mail-in ballot will always be a risk perpetually.
Right. Well, and wide scale mail-in voting is an open door invitation to engage in voter registration fraud.
Absolutely.
Right? Because what it does is it converts your system. Arizona's a voter ID state, right?
Absolutely.
No, it's not. What percentage of Maricopa County votes by mail?
Well,
can you go full screen?
Right. I think it's 80.
Thanks.
I think it's 80-some percent.
80-something percent?
Yeah, approximately 80%.
Of Maricopa County vote by mail.
Mm-hmm.
And what percentage of the state of Arizona, in terms of total electorate, is Maricopa County?
62% of the entire state.
A substantial amount of this state votes by mail.
Right. And no identity is validated.
No.
Right.
No, you don't have to show ID to vote by mail.
Right.
So this when people like Stephen Richer come out and say, "Oh, Arizona's a voter identity state," bullshit. It's not. Arizona is not a voter identity state. If you vote by mail, once you're registered to vote, do you even have to show an ID to register to vote?
Well, so that's debatable, right? Because you have these NGOs out there registering people to vote, and they're documenting ID information, but I don't know that anybody ever sees it. And they're turned in by these third-party people, or they're sent in the mail, and the elections departments are not asking to show ID.
Right.
And I believe there's something in the HAVA Act that says once you register to vote, you cannot vote until you first show an ID. Yet we have people registering to vote and voting mail-in ballot for years, while never showing up and taking that first step to initiate their identity.
Right.
And that is a federal law violation.
Right. And so once you get on it used to be the permanent early voting list. What is it now?
It's the AVIL now, active early voter list.
Right. That's like Datsun changing its name to Nissan, right?
Right.
We were a crappy car.
Or how about Dominion changing its name to Liberty Vote?
Liberty Vote, right? Yeah. And then also owning the right to the poll book, right?
Right.
And so, Arizona is not a voter identity state. If you can vote without showing ID, you're not a voter identity state. And in Arizona, a majority of voters vote by mail.
And never show ID.
Never show ID.
That's very true.
Yeah. So.
Well, are you positive? Like, where do you set? Do you think the Trump administration is going to make big changes in the 2026 year, Brian? Are you hoping?
I think big changes are coming. I think big changes are coming. I think the DOJ is very actively going to go after these voter registration databases, which I think they have a right to, right?
Right.
Because Congress has passed laws relating to voting at the state level and voter registration databases specifically. And so I think that there's going to be lawsuits. I think Katie Hobbs is going to lose again, right? She likes to brag when she wins at the district court level, but I don't seem to ever hear from her when she loses at the appellate court level.
Right. Everybody goes radio silent.
Radio silent.
Reminds me of the 2001 World Series. I was at that game, and the Yankees fans were like, "Yeah!" Everybody's going crazy.
Yeah.
And then Luis Gonzalez hits that little plunk through the middle. The Diamondbacks win, and you look around, and there's like, it was like the rapture happened. All these seats were empty. Where were the Yankees fans? They were gone. I don't know what happened to them. They evaporated.
Right.
But,
so I think there's going to be a very active, a very rapid push, to get that data.
I do too.
It's interesting today. You had a massive, large-scale Department of Justice raid in the Somali communities of Minneapolis.
Yeah.
Relating directly to this fraud, and so that stands the potential to significantly change their voter registration database outlook, because you got a lot of people involved in this scheme to defraud federal government taxpayers and Minnesota taxpayers. So,
I agree. Be encouraged. I think 2026 is going to be the year of exposure. What do you think, Brian?
I think it's going to be the year of exposure. We got some more public records requests that are going to be coming out, and again, we would ask for your support. If you like what organizations like We the People USA Alliance does, we are a 501c3 nonprofit. So if you want to make a contribution to our organization to help us continue our work, we would greatly appreciate it. The government agencies are essentially requiring litigation now to get any form of public records.
Right.
And do we have a portal set up yet for contributions?
Not at this time.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll have that
Unfortunately,
done
it's
this
almost
week,
done.
right?
Yeah, the holidays have delayed the banking situation, but yeah, almost there.
Get it done,
Yes,
woman.
we can definitely use your support. This is something new. We're practicing again.
Right.
We did this last time, so we're going to keep practicing.
Right.
We're going to get it right. And when we come back next time, hopefully we're going to have a nice little link on the screen to tell you where to go to donate.
Right.
That's the plan.
Yeah. Well, when we come back next week, we will have a nice little thing on the screen to tell you where you can make a contribution.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yes, we will.
Yeah.
So have a very happy and blessed New Year, and let's be excited for what may come, because I think there's going to be a big election shakeup in 2026.
Yeah. Peace.